overwhelmed and cannot support those people, and to cut the support from those who are in need of money, of resources to actually help them live a basic quality of life, I think is frankly shameful. We are seeing the narrative that people who claim PIP are wasters or dossers. They need to get back to work, when the reality is PIP is a working benefit. People who claim PIP can also already be in work. I have constituents who use their PIP money to get taxis to work because they cannot walk and they cannot drive because of their disabilities. To cut that would be to cut their lifeline. As I've said, Northern Ireland will be disproportionately impacted by these cuts, and I think that anything that is coming forward needs to have people at the centre of it. If we are looking at welfare reform in a way to save money, then we are forgetting that at the heart of these benefits, these support systems, are people who are already facing barriers in their everyday life. And I would urge every party in this House to back anything that we can do to put pressure on Westminster to not go through with some of the rumoured cuts that we are hearing about. And when it comes to this House, that we can do everything that we absolutely can within our power to show people that we are a society that values people regardless of their disability, that values people who need dignity in their everyday life just to have a basic standard of living. And I would urge everybody to support that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Robbie Butler. And members, today we celebrate not just one, not two, but three outstanding sporting successes. And I have to say, Speaker, I'm sure you'll join me for this, Lagan Valley and beyond can take a bow, because we are officially a powerhouse of sporting greatness. First up, the unstoppable Lucy Best, 2 gold medals and a bronze at the Special Olympics World Winter Games in Turin. Lucy, you didn't just compete, you conquered. You raced down the slopes in the giant slalom and the Super G despite training on dry mats. And Mr. Speaker, that would be like training for Wimbledon on a trampoline. Lucy, along with other skiers, was skiing against people who had trained and were accustomed to snowy slopes. But Lucy showed the world true Northern Irish determination and what that looks like. Lucy's success has been celebrated far and wide with congratulations from her Live Life Wellbeing friends, the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister, and of course an unforgettable moment when our Special Olympics team met the Irish rugby team at the airport. But I do think, looking at the pictures, the Irish rugby team enjoyed it more than our other victors. But it wasn't just Lucy. Also was Caelan McConville from Achigallan, another gold medal winner at the Games. What an achievement, and proof that when it comes to talent, Northern Ireland delivers at every level, on every stage. And also, speaking of historic victories, Wallace High School. On March the 17th, just yesterday, after years of near misses, they finally lifted the school's cup, defeating Royal School Armagh 24-15 at the Kingspan Stadium. And a special shout out to man of the match, Rio McDonough. He led the charge with 2 crucial tries, and he helped captain John Rogers become the first Wallace player to lift the trophy outright, fulfilling a dream that his father started in 1989. And in regard to Rio, I just want to mention his dad. I played football with his dad, but I think he had been more fit for the rugby pitch. So Stevie McDonough, you missed the beat, but your son didn't. So whether it's skiing, rugby, or pure Northern Irish grit, we are unstoppable. Lucy, Caelan, Wallace High, congratulations, and thank you for sharing your moments with us.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I think as the only former pupil of Wallace High School in the chamber here, I'd have to offer my congratulations to my old school. I call Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the judicial review on the A5 is before the High Court, and I had the pleasure of standing with the families and the campaign groups outside of the court this morning, along with colleagues from this Assembly. People today are united in their fight for the A5 road, and indeed that road, whilst it has been a symbol of devastation and pain, also unites us. It unites us in our drive to see this road fully delivered. For the last number of years, indeed for decades, in fact, this road has claimed countless lives. It does not discriminate. It has taken the lives of people from all age groups, all backgrounds, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, grandparents, neighbours and friends. And on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker, all who travel on that road is at risk for a very simple reason. It is, in my view, the most dangerous road on these islands, and that is what justifies the need for its immediate and absolute upgrade. This road has been fraught with delays and difficulties and many challenges over the last number of years, and there are a small number of individuals who are adamant to see out their objection, and they have their rights to do that before the court. However, the value of human life is paramount, and in fact above all else. And I understand some of the arguments that are being made and concerns about the environment and land, but none of that should trump the value of a single human life. It is important today, Mr. Speaker, that a unanimous and very clear message comes from all politicians across the House that the A5 is essential to ensure that we save human lives, that we protect human lives, and that we ensure the safety of the people travelling there. And that's before we even get to the economic arguments of the benefits of that road that will bring to this part or that part of the island. Just for people that have the luxury of living on the doorstep of trains and good public transport links, people in Tyrone do not enjoy those benefits. We are forced onto this road on a daily basis. Every town and village in my constituency leads to the A5. We have only one route of transport, really, if we want to get anywhere in a timely fashion, and that is either in your car or by some other vehicle. So therefore, every day, through no fault of our own, our lives are at risk. So the message to this morning is simple. Enough of the delays, enough of the challenges, enough of the deaths. It is time the A5 was delivered in its entirety, so we can fulfil the promise that was made to the people in the west of this island and ensure that no one else loses their lives travelling to work, back to their families, or on a journey on a daily basis. Thank you.
Sharon.
I just want to extend a hearty congratulations this morning to the players and the management team from St Pat's College, Mahara, who yesterday won the Hogan Cup in Croke Park, winning that cup for the sixth time in the school's history, a fantastic achievement. And I want to extend congratulations to the entire staff and pupils in St Pat's who took students from South Derry and beyond on such an achievement, well deserved, and rightfully will enjoy their celebrations now.
All given.
Speaker, as Education Minister, sport is a huge part of what happens in our schools, and there are many competitions that run all year round. Kilkeel High School, the treble, under 14, under 16, under 18 by the girls, first time that has happened in lifting those competitions. No pressure on the boys at the school. St Pat's Macarragh, just mentioned, again winning their competition. But locally I want to speak about Lagan Valley and my own constituency. The Schools Cup is one of the oldest rugby competitions in the world, founded in 1876. And the Wallace High School have now competed in 6 finals, the first of them being in 1989, when the then triumphant captain John Rogers' father captained the Wallace High School in 1989, and there yesterday John was able to lead the team to victory. An historic occasion, the first time that they have outright won the trophy, because they shared it with Royal School Armagh during that COVID year when a final wasn't played. So this was a historic occasion for the school, one that has filled Lisburn with great pride, because we, yesterday when I was meeting with people, they were speaking about the final before it was being played. There was a great anticipation. So Lisburn, we are proud of Wallace High School. The parents who live every single tackle whenever their son was on that pitch, hoping that they get back up again, the pride of those parents now to have Wallace having lifted the trophy. A great relief, but great joy as well. But this has been many years in the making. I want to pay tribute to the entire team at Wallace High School under the leadership of Derek Suffren. The chant went out, Derek Suffren's Blue and White Army, and they made their voices very loud at Ravenhill yesterday. A tremendous victory over a number of years. The principal, Deborah O'Hare, who retires this year, What a legacy to leave the school, having led the school under her leadership. And I pay tribute not just to the sporting success of the school, but it is a healthy mix of academic and sporting, providing that balance for the young people there. I watched the game with Neil Lucas, the chairman of the Board of Governors, also my brother-in-law, a former head boy of Wallace High School, and the pride from him in lifting that trophy. So I want to say a huge congratulations to everybody involved at the Wallace High School in being the 2025 rugby champions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to bring attention to ovarian cancer, a disease continually overlooked, resulting in its symptoms and diagnostic pathways being incredibly misunderstood. March marks Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and here in Northern Ireland, over 200 women are diagnosed every year. Like many other diseases and conditions within women's health, there are numerous assumptions and misconceptions about what the diagnosis process for ovarian cancer entails, alongside its symptoms and its treatment. I recently met with the team at Target Ovarian Cancer who are working to change that, but also learnt about some of the statistics they told me, and they were staggering. 31% of women in Northern Ireland are diagnosed with ovarian cancer will not survive 1 year. And with that, only 39% of women who are diagnosed at an early stage here. We all know that early intervention is vital to improving health outcomes, and some myth-busting is needed. 46% of women in Northern Ireland believe a cervical screening will detect ovarian cancer. This simply isn't true. I want to highlight the symptoms that every woman should look out for when it comes to early diagnosis of ovarian cancer. These symptoms are bloating, feeling full, pelvic or abdominal pain, and needing to wee more often. I urge every person around this chamber today, or anyone who may be listening, to share these symptoms with their loved ones in their communities. Finally, I want to finish by thanking my constituent Stephen. Stephen lost his wife Julie to ovarian cancer in June 2024, and every day he now campaigns to help other women and ensure they are aware of what he calls the sneaky symptoms. Stephen, I know, has contacted many of the elected representatives in this chamber to put this issue on our agenda, and as his MLA, he's ensured that I'm aware of the impact ovarian cancer has and what more needs to be done. His efforts and determination in raising awareness is entirely commendable, and he works to prevent any other family from having to experience what he has gone through. I want to thank him and the many other women and their families who have spoken out about their own experiences of ovarian cancer to ensure that others in Northern Ireland have better health outcomes. Thank you.
I rise today to voice my serious concern about the Labour Government's plans to cut disability benefits. My office has been inundated with messages from worried constituents asking what these changes will mean for them and their families. I have also received many messages asking for politicians here to take a strong stand against these cuts. It is truly shocking, Ciancórla, that a Labour Government would seek to punish disabled people in this way. The level of callousness shown by this Labour Government towards vulnerable people shows they are as bad as, and perhaps in some ways even worse, than the Tories. The detail on what changes will be enforced are due imminently. The application process could become much more stringent, especially for people with mental health issues, and levels of support decreased significantly. Every one of us here today will have had constituents in their offices seeking assistance with PIP applications. The idea that they could make this process even more onerous and complicated beggars belief. Entitlement to PIP is based on the added difficulties that disabilities can bring to people's lives, and it is designed to ease the additional financial burden people face as a result of their disabilities. The idea that disabled people are a burden on the taxpayer goes against everything that Sinn Féin believes. Our social security system is in place to give those people who cannot support themselves a good quality of life. Many disabled people would like to work, but the support simply isn't there to allow them to fulfil their potential. And the reality is that many people who have disabilities are unable to work, and these people should not be punished. The Labour Government needs to turn away from the failed ideology of austerity and start investing in our people and in our communities. The Minister for Communities needs to urgently lobby the Secretary of State and convey our opposition and stress the need for a rethink, particularly given that these cuts will have a disproportionate impact here in the North. All the parties in this chamber must stand together and oppose these disastrous cuts.
Stephen Dunn.
I would like to warmly congratulate Bangor Hockey Club on winning the very prestigious Anderson Cup in an exciting cup final last Wednesday evening against South Antrim. This was indeed a very remarkable achievement and marks their first ever major piece of silverware following their 3-2 win at Havelock Park last week, and something the club can rightly be very proud of, given that it was 1989 when they last reached this final. The team displayed outstanding determination throughout the competition, culminating in a nail-biting final where their resilience and teamwork shone through as they came from behind to win this prestigious trophy. And thanks to a hat-trick from Ryan Burgess, much to the delight of their travelling supporters who came out in force and everyone involved with Bangor Hockey Club. I want to pay particular tribute to both the players and the coaching staff and the management and all the very dedicated volunteers for their skill and hard work throughout the season, culminating in this success. Like many local sporting clubs across North Down, Bangor Hockey Club is run entirely by volunteers who give up their time to young men, women and children to enjoy the sport that they love, learning many invaluable life skills of hard work, teamwork, commitment, discipline, friendships and so much more, some of the values that we all know that sport brings to everybody. Bangor in the North Down area has a great and very proud tradition of hockey, and Bangor Hockey Club is continuing to thrive with almost 300 adult members and over 400 junior members competing at every level within Ulster Hockey throughout a very competitive season. I would also like to commend Ulster Hockey for their work and leadership as a sports governing body to promote the sport of hockey, and we must ensure that hockey as a sport continues to get the investment and support that it deserves. Once again, my warmest congratulations to Bangor Hockey Club, and I wish them every success going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honeyford.
Speaker, just to echo comments, it's been already said about Lucy Best and Colin McConville, the Special Olympics success. I was at their launch several months ago at the slopes in Craigavon, and it was full of excitement on that day, and it was fantastic to see, and what a journey they've been on. I also want to raise it for your own school, as you said, Mr. Speaker, for Wallace High School's success yesterday and finally winning the Schools Cup for the first time. It's such a fantastic achievement for the boys, and it was an absolute pleasure to be there yesterday to cheer on the school and watch friends of mine, kids, play and excel on that team. And I want to pass my really well done and congratulations to everyone there. But wins like that are delivered by a team or a squad over 70 minutes, but there's much more to that squad of players than who's on the pitch. And I think a shout out has to go to all the parents. I've been that rugby dad, and the amount of journeying and driving around and taxiing every morning and afternoons. So the parents deserve a lot of credit for this as well. And then you go to the coaching staff, and it's already been mentioned about Derek Suffren, been there for quite a while. He's worked away for years. Successes like this don't happen in one season. It happens over many years of building, and you know, it's just to pass on that to the coaching team that's there at Wallace. Deborah O'Hare is her final year at principal. What an achievement for her as she retires and moves on, and delighted for Deborah. So well done to Wallace and to Lisburn and for the wider area. Enjoy the celebrations. I know quite a few of them are going on to professional sport, but those who aren't, I hope, will get involved in their local clubs and enjoy the sport in the community around. Also to point out, over half of that team play for Dramara GAC in Down, which is fantastic to start to see, and we're seeing the breakdown of bringing together of our community. So seeing that and having a Down player on that team as well is really brilliant to see in Lagan Valley, and the change that we are seeing. And just finally, a shout out to Danske Bank. Danske has supported youth sport and school sport for many years, and I just really appreciate the finances that go into sport to allow all of these things to happen. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leanne Forsyth.
And I rise to put on record a massive heartfelt congratulations to Kilkeel High School, who last week had huge success in girls hockey, and I thank the Education Minister for putting on record his congratulations. Kilkeel High School completed the High School Cup treble, winning the under-14s, the under-16s and under-18 competitions all last week. An absolutely outstanding achievement, and I congratulate all of the players, the coaches, the teachers and the family and supporters that travelled to support the team. And I was privileged to join the supporters at the under-18s final on Thursday morning in the Adjournment Pavilion, and it was a pleasure to be part of the celebrations. I very nearly ended up in Public Accounts Committee with maroon and blue face paint, but I escaped it, but I'm very proud to celebrate with my own home school. And as a former deputy head girl, house captain and hockey captain, I just genuinely am so proud to congratulate Kilkeel High School today on their continued success, decades on, and I also want to wish the boys all the very best tomorrow as they are in the Burnley Plate final. Just really proud to stand here to congratulate my home school and celebrate the mighty, mighty morn.
Timothy Gaston.
Mr. Speaker, since this House last met, some of our Unionist members have had the opportunity to meet with President Trump. I trust that in those meetings they presented the case for Northern Ireland when it comes to the protocol. The President has correctly identified the EU as a protectionist racket when it comes to international trade which seeks to take advantage of everyone outside its borders. It would not have taken a genius to work out, therefore, that one would have had a sympathetic ear in the White House when it came to the protocol, and for this very reason it was important that unionism attended these events. While the Prime Minister has been clear that he would like to see a trade deal between the UK and the US, it is likely that Northern Ireland would be excluded from important parts of any such agreement. It is therefore more than probable that we will find ourselves excluded from the opportunities such a deal would present because of the protocol, which means that we are left stranded in the EU customs union and the single market for goods. This is not only a scandal as far as sovereignty is concerned, but it will also reduce the size of the market available for the United States in the event of a trade agreement with the Trump administration.
Paul Jerry Carroll. Mr. Carroll, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak on the need to combat fascist organisation in our communities. At the weekend past, there graffiti went up with my name on it and crosshairs attached to it. Disgraceful and pathetic attempt to try and intimidate me and others who speak out against racism in our city. I want to thank people in this House and in the community for reaching out and sending their best wishes to me and my family. This intimidation won't work, won't stop me from speaking out on anything, and it's worth also mentioning the brief time that I have, Mr. Speaker. In the last month, there's been thousands of people attending events as part of Fáilte Fiche Cúig in West Belfast and other community organisation anti-racist events. This Sunday, United Against Racism are organising rallies in Belfast and Derry, and people will be out in force, sending a clear and loud message that racism and fascism are not welcome in any part of our communities, and that, I think, is the best way to respond to fascist intimidation of any kind. These fascist fringe groups are trying to stoke division and hatred, don't represent the ordinary people of West Belfast. They don't speak for the vast majority of people anywhere in the north.
Time's up.
They're isolated and they mostly operate online. Thank you.
Thank you, members. That concludes members' statements. Next, members, is further consideration stage of the Child Support Enforcement Bill. I call the Minister for Communities, Mr. Gordon Lyons, to move the bill.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you, Minister. As no amendments have been tabled, there is no opportunity to discuss the Child Support Enforcement Bill now. Members will, of course, be able to have a full debate at final stage. The further consideration stage of the Child Support Enforcement Bill is therefore concluded. The bill stands referred to the Speaker. Thank you, members. The next items of business are motions to approve 3 statutory rules, all of which relate to welfare supplementary payments. I will ask the Clerk to read the first motion and call on the Minister to move it. The Minister will then be invited to commence the debate on all 3 motions as listed on the order paper. When all who wish to speak have done so, I shall put the question on the first motion. The second motion will then be read into the record and I will call the Minister to move it. The question will then be put on that motion straight away. That process will then be repeated for the third motion. If that is clear, I shall proceed. Clerk, please read the first motion.
That the draft Welfare Supplementary Payment Universal Credit Regulations Northern Ireland 2025 be approved.
Thank you. The Business Committee has agreed that there should be no time limit on this debate, and I call the Minister to open the debate on the motion. Minister, can I ask you to move the motion formally first? Thank you.
I beg to move.
Thank you, and I'll repeat that for accuracy. The Business Committee has agreed no time limit on the debate, and I call the Minister to open the debate on the motion. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I am seeking the Assembly's approval for 3 sets of regulations in relation to the welfare supplementary payment schemes. These are the Welfare Supplementary Payment Extension Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, the Welfare Supplementary Payment Universal Credit Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, and the Welfare Supplementary Payment Universal Credit Social Sector Size Criteria Regulations 2025. As members will be aware, my department currently administers a number of welfare mitigation schemes that are designed to alleviate the impact of some of the welfare changes that were introduced from 2016. The mitigation schemes provide financial support to people who are affected by various welfare changes, including the benefit cap, the social sector size criteria, more commonly known as the bedroom tax, the time limiting of contribution-based employment and support allowance, and the reassessment from DLA to PIP. Members will be aware that most of the welfare mitigation schemes, excluding that for the social sector size criteria, are due to end on the 31st of March this year. However, as I announced in December, those schemes that were due to end this year will now be extended until the 31st of March 2028. The mitigation of the social sector size criteria continues to have no end date. To ensure this important financial support continues, I am bringing 3 sets of regulations to the Assembly for approval today. I will briefly summarise the purpose of each set of regulations. The Welfare Supplementary Payment Extension Regulations will provide for mitigation payments to continue to be paid until the 31st of March 2028 for people affected by the benefit cap, employment and support allowance time limiting, the transition from DLA to PIP, the loss of disability-related premiums and the loss of care payments. This legislation will also ensure that certain exclusions from mitigation in relation to the benefit cap and social sector size criteria that were removed from the 10th of February 2022 will not be reapplied. For example, this legislation means that entitlement to a benefit cap welfare supplementary payment will not be restricted to when a person first had their benefit capped. Also, mitigation of the social sector size criteria will continue if someone moves property and continues to under-occupy. The Welfare Supplementary Payment Universal Credit Regulations and the Universal Credit Social Sector Size Criteria Regulations will provide a statutory basis for welfare supplementary payments to be made to people claiming universal credit. Since the introduction of universal credit here in September 2017, my department has used the authority of successive budget acts to provide mitigation payments to people claiming universal credit. This has ensured that universal credit claimants affected by the benefit cap and the social sector size criteria have received the same protection as people claiming legacy benefits. The regulations before the House today will provide a statutory basis for these welfare supplementary payments and provide more certainty to affected people who are claiming universal credit. Importantly, the legislation will not change the conditions of entitlement that my department has applied to universal credit claimants since 2017. These mitigations will ensure that an estimated 36,000 people will be protected from the social sector size criteria, while approximately 1,600 families with children will be protected from the benefit cap each year. This will provide much needed certainty to so many families across Northern Ireland, and I trust that members will agree with me and approve these regulations today. I'd like to move.
Thank you, Minister, for opening the debate. I now call the Chairperson of the Committee for Communities, Colin Pildernew.
Last Concordia, I raise as Chair of the Committee for Communities to support this package of 3 linked sets of regulations that are essential in ensuring some of the most vulnerable people in our society continue to receive the financial support they depend upon. The committee has carefully considered the regulations and is content for them to proceed. However, while we welcome their continuation, we must also express our frustration at another short to medium term extension of welfare mitigations rather than the implementation of a long-term stable legislative framework. So the regulations then deal with the welfare supplementary payment, universal credit, NI 2025, which are a necessary step to ensure the support for universal credit claimants is placed on a firm statutory footing. Since universal credit was introduced in 2017, many claimants have received mitigation payments only through administrative means, payments that depend on annual budget bills rather than dedicated legislation. This has always been a less secure arrangement. Unlike statutory entitlements, administrative payments can be altered or removed more easily as they rely on annual budgetary decisions rather than firm legal protections. These new regulations correct that weakness by making universal credit mitigations a legal entitlement, giving claimants greater stability and security. It is important to stress that this does not expand entitlement, it simply formalises the existing system, ensuring payments continue without reliance on year-to-year discretionary allocations. Moving on, the ongoing need for bedroom tax mitigations. The welfare supplementary, known as the social sector size criteria regulations, deal with what is commonly known as the bedroom tax. As members will be aware, this policy reduces housing support for social tenants deemed to have more bedrooms than they require, affecting both housing benefit claimants and those receiving the housing cost element of universal credit. However, this policy ignores the realities of housing here. Many of those affected, older tenants, separated parents and disabled people, have genuine reasons for needing this additional space. Mitigation payments have protected thousands from the financial consequences of this policy, and these regulations now formalise that protection for universal credit claimants, aligning them with those entitled to housing benefit. This is a welcome step as it ensures a medium-term security rather than leaving claimants at the mercy of shifting budgetary decisions. And in terms of extending the wider package of welfare mitigations, the final set of regulations, the Welfare Supplementary Payment Regulations 25, extends the wider package of welfare mitigations until 31st of March 2028. These include payments that mitigate the impact of the benefit cap, which disproportionately affect larger families, the time limiting of contributory employment and support allowance, which impacts those unable to work due to illness, and the transition from disability living allowance to personal independent payment, which has resulted in many claimants losing out on vital financial support. Without these regulations, all these payments would end in March 2025, creating a cliff edge for thousands of households. It is therefore absolutely vital that these mitigations are extended. However, while Committee Cancollia welcomes these extensions, it was with relief. They do not address the fundamental problems. We are still dealing with mitigations as short-term fixes rather than permanent protections. Mitigations were intended as temporary measures under the Fresh Start Agreement, yet here we are almost a decade later, still relying on extensions every few years. Obviously, we hope that Assembly will be in place in 2028 when these mitigations will doubtless be on the agenda once again. We cannot ignore history. Political instability has left vital decisions in limbo before, and if these mitigations were to suddenly expire, thousands of families would be thrown into severe financial hardship with no immediate solution. For that reason, Committee is keen to understand now what work and consideration of other solutions is being undertaken at this time. Committee strongly urges the Minister and the Executive to undertake evidence-based work now, which could place these mitigations on a much longer-term legislative footing. It is also crucial to recognise that while these regulations extend existing protections, they do not address new and emerging welfare challenges. Groups such as the Cliff Edge Coalition have repeatedly highlighted the fact that the current package of mitigations does not go far enough. Specifically, the two-child limit on benefits is driving families into deepening poverty. Scotland is now committed to fully mitigating this policy from 2026. Should we be considering the same approach here? The 5-week wait for universal credit is pushing claimants into debt and financial crisis. This remains one of the most widely criticised aspects of the system, yet it has still not been addressed. And support for private renters is entirely absent from the current mitigation package, despite rising rents placing enormous pressure on low-income households. The cost of living crisis last Cancollia has made the financial pressures on claimants even more severe, and we cannot assume that the current package is sufficient to meet today's needs. So in conclusion, in relation to my chair role, these 3 sets of regulations are essential and should be supported. They prevent an immediate welfare crisis, ensure continued support for claimants and place some of the payments on a more secure statutory footing. However, the committee urges the Minister and the Executive to act now to ensure that welfare mitigations are placed on a longer-term legislative footing. We cannot continue operating in short-term cycles, leaving thousands of vulnerable people uncertain about their financial future. Furthermore, we must acknowledge that the current package of mitigations is incomplete. The 2-child limit, the 5-week universal wait and the lack of support for private renters are serious gaps that must be addressed. On behalf of the committee, I am content to recommend that the Assembly approve these regulations, but I urge members to reflect on how we could provide long-term stability and security to those who rely on these vital supports. I'll now make just a few brief remarks in my role as Sinn Féin spokesperson for communities. The passage of this legislation, Lascian Corlia, will come as huge relief to many in our communities. There was perhaps some concern that if the appropriate legislation wasn't in place in time, these mitigations could have lapsed after the 31st of March deadline. As has been outlined, these regulations will extend the existing mitigations until March 2028 and give statutory cover to those claimants who are in receipt of universal credit and who are also eligible for supplementary welfare payments. Sinn Féin was opposed to Tory welfare reform, which gave rise to the bedroom tax and the benefit cap, and the mitigation package secured by the Executive was extremely hard fought for. These mitigations are vital protection for the least well-off in our society. As we all know, poverty is on the rise across society, with 1 in 5 people now estimated to be living in relative poverty. The cost of living crisis has had the greatest impact on working class communities, and in particular those people who are in receipt of social security. If these mitigations had been allowed to lapse, it would have been devastating for thousands of families, with many people pushed further into financial hardship. I want to thank the Cliff Edge Coalition in particular for their campaigning on this issue and for highlighting the impact of removing the mitigations. And finally, Ceann Comhairle, a 3-year extension, while welcome, only serves to kick the issue down the road for another period of time. We need to see a permanent solution which will give a long-term certainty to people who are in need of these mitigations. We also need to see a roadmap for the introduction of additional mitigations, particularly the 2-child limit. The Minister has committed to bringing forward the anti-poverty strategy before the end of this month. That anti-poverty strategy should set out clearly a way forward in relation to welfare mitigations, and I would again urge the Minister to publish the anti-poverty strategy as soon as possible.
Thank you. I call Daniel McCrossan.
Deputy Speaker, I didn't realise that I was put down, but I agree with everything the Chair has said, and I'm happy enough. The Minister will be pleased to know.
Thank you. I call Jerry Carroll.
Speaker, the extension of welfare supplementary payments is a testament to the tireless work of anti-poverty campaigners, as the Chair stated, including the Cliff Edge Coalition, and I want to pay tribute to their work. Welfare mitigations are an example of successful super parity, where the North has made policy choices that diverge from other parts of the UK. Welfare mitigations have shielded citizens here from some of the worst aspects of Tory welfare reform, but it doesn't mean that they've been totally immune from that. It's worth remembering that 3 out of 4 executive parties voted in favour of welfare reform back in 2015, and extending these mitigation payments must be an admission of regret for that poor, awful decision. But since we all now seem to agree that the impacts of welfare reform are so harmful that they justify mitigation, maybe we can also reflect on the brutality of our wider social security system. The benefit system has been cut to the bone by successive Tory governments, now Labour, and ministers here. And obviously they are obsessed with a system of sanctions. They're intent on cracking down on extremely rare instances of benefit fraud rather than going after tax dodging, multi-million and billion-pound corporations and obscenely wealthy individuals. The austerity state, Deputy Speaker, is hell-bent on punishing the poor rather than expanding the social safety net for the sick, the elderly and the disabled people whose lives depend on a strong and reliable social security system. And the latest assault on the sick and disabled comes from the Labour government, who last year called food banks a moral scar on our society, and now they're seemingly cutting benefits to pieces, something that surely increased reliance on emergency food parcels. And it's no coincidence, Deputy Speaker, that the British government is desperately making cuts to the welfare system while planning to boost defence spending. Keir Starmer and his party are taking money from the pockets of the poor and marginalised people to give to the billionaire shareholders of arms companies. They announced those decisions in the exact same week. And there's nothing subtle about it. This is an attempt to strip away welfare in order to fund warfare. Now is the time, Deputy Speaker, to build on the success of our existing welfare mitigations, which helped some 38,000 households last year. We need to mitigate the two-child limit, a cruel policy that disproportionately harms women and children here, especially in my own constituency. And we also need to prepare for mitigating against the disastrous welfare cuts, probably to be announced this afternoon. I'd appreciate if the Minister has any update on that in terms of what his department have, how they've engaged with the British government, and what contingency plans his department intends to take if the Labour government continue down their disastrous, cruel path. And will the executive parties learn from the lessons of the past and break from the punitive Westminster welfare reform, or will it continue to follow their austerity path we wait to see? Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola Shamel-Holland.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And thank you very much, Minister, for coming to the House today to put these regulations forward. I rise today to support the regulations, the draft welfare supplementary payment regulations, and I acknowledge the vital role that these mitigations have played in alleviating the financial stress for so many families across Northern Ireland. Extending these measures for another 3 years provides an element of stability, as discussed by the Chair, amid particular ongoing economic challenges that we know those in our community face. And I do thank the Minister for this. However, as the Chairperson has outlined, I do regret that this couldn't have been a longer term fix rather than another medium term cliff edge. Whilst the mitigations are essential, it has saddened me as well that this was an opportunity to be a bit bolder in terms of helping lift people out of poverty and to mitigate the worst of Tory austerity cuts and, regretfully, what could happen in the next couple of hours, Labour cuts. The Independent Advisory Panel on Welfare Mitigations, led by Liz Allenby, presented a comprehensive suite of recommendations aimed at mitigating and alleviating poverty for those most in need. And one of the biggest injustices that could have been tackled was the two-child benefit cap. Or benefit limit, sorry. Then the 1 in 10 children in Northern Ireland, more than 45,000, are affected by this policy. I know in the past the Minister has spoken to the House and talked about the administration costs associated with mitigating this cut. But I think that when we look at what we are faced now in terms of the rising levels of child poverty, it is something that we need to look at, regardless of instead of saying that we don't have the money, I would ask, if we don't have the money now, we're going to be paying it later on down the line. And I know that is something that the Minister has also said. I have such a heavy heart today coming to the chamber because of the rumours and conjecture of what is about to be faced by our communities. And when we look at the regulations that are put before us and the costs of the regulations that are put before us, they are essential, they are absolutely needed, they are rising people out of really dire situations, but it's not going to be enough. And that's, I suppose, where my heavy heart to these regulations come from, because I know that what is about to come down the line will be so much worse, and for the most vulnerable cohort of our community. So I've actually just done away with my speech, because I think that's probably the crux of where we're at today, that whilst these regulations are really welcome, they're just not enough. And I think that we have to call for a legislative programme linked to our anti-poverty strategy that I know the Minister has committed to bringing forward to the Executive by the end of this month. But it has to be coupled up with investment, it has to be coupled up with support, especially if we are looking at regulations and cuts that are going to take from the purses of those most vulnerable. What are we putting in place? What kind of society are we trying to legislate for? Because whilst these regulations will take some of the the sting out of those cuts, particularly the benefit cap. What are we going to do? I suppose, Minister, what are you planning to do in terms of what could be facing our most vulnerable? I know what you're going to say, Jerry, but I'll allow you to say it.
I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say. Would the member agree with me that it's really concerning that the Labour Party, whilst they didn't specifically mention these cuts in their manifesto, are seemingly plowing ahead with it? And from my knowledge, no party in this House, MLAs or MPs, had any mention of this kind of welfare attacks in their manifesto, but seemingly this Labour Party still wants to go ahead with it. Does she agree with me there's a huge democratic deficit in that question?
Thank you, and I really appreciate that the member didn't use it as a wee previous thing on the very difficult situation that we were faced with previous welfare reforms. But yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think that there was a lot of hope when people heard that Labour were coming into power. I know that I felt it, particularly after the years of devastating policies that the Tories brought in, and there was that hope, and I think that's probably what's most devastating, is that we have just seen cut after cut focused on the most vulnerable in our society, and I don't think that there's any MLA, past or present, in this House who would want to be seen to I suppose to justify the attacking and the removal of benefits from those who are most vulnerable. And whilst I understand that there are issues in terms of the cost and the economic argument about this, I would really hope that the Minister can maybe give us a bit of an update on where the anti-poverty strategy is. Will we see it before the next month? What will be put in place to provide support for those that will be, I suppose, left behind in terms of these regulations? And then finally, those that are what update he can give this House about what he has heard that's coming down the line from DWP. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the listed speakers. I now call on the Minister to conclude and wind up the debate on the motion. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm pleased with the consensus that we have around the Assembly for these regulations. Let me deal with three issues that have been raised in particular. First of all, in regards to the announcements that will be made later on today, I haven't had a chance yet to chat with my counterparts, unfortunately because I'm in the chamber. I'm not able to chat with them, but I do hope to have a call with ministers and DWP before that announcement is made. But I can assure the House that I will provide whatever information I can, and my department will quickly be doing work to look at the impacts that this will have on Northern Ireland in particular. Secondly, and I know we're straying off the debate slightly here, but the anti-poverty strategy has been raised, and I am working on that. I'm determined to meet that deadline, to make sure that it does go to the Executive. But I will warn members in this House that I have an ambition for people in Northern Ireland that's greater than simply benefits. I want to make sure that, yes, a proper social security net is part of how we help people, but I have a far greater ambition than that. I want to make sure that people are better off and that we can break down those barriers to getting people into employment as well. Third issue that I want to raise is in relation to the review, and the reason why we don't have an indefinite extension of some of the mitigation schemes is simply because a number of the welfare reforms have largely completed any transitional phase, and the number of people that are in receipt, for example, of employment and support allowance time limiting